What if I told you that Africa's biggest development problem was not lack of intelligence, not lack of ambition, not lack of resources, but a fly? A fly so small you could crush it with 2 fingers, yet powerful enough to stop empires, block cities, and shape entire economies. Today, I'll show you how the tsetse fly, yes, an insect, this tiny insect didn't just spread disease, but quietly prevented development across large parts of Africa for centuries. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. History isn't only written by kings and colonizers, but sometimes by bugs. Let's start simple. For millennia, across Europe and Asia, the wheel of development was turned by 2 massive engines, the plow and the cart. Agriculture and transport. And what powered those engines? Draft animals. Oxen to plow fields, horses to pull carts and chariots, donkeys for trade. This animal power created food surpluses, which allowed for specialization, which built cities, trade networks, and empires. It was the hardware of ancient development. But in some large parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the story was different. The tsetse fly lives in large parts of sub-Saharan Africa. It looks harmless, but when it bites, it can transmit trypanosomiasis, better known as sleeping sickness in humans, and nagana in animals. For humans, it causes fever, confusion, extreme fatigue, and eventually death. But for cattle, it's devastating. Infected cows become weak, infertile, and often die. And this is where the real story begins. Because development, especially in pre-industrial societies, depends heavily on animals. In tsetse fly-infested regions of Africa, for cattle, horses, donkeys, it's a death sentence. So, in this vast region, you could not keep draft animals. Think about the implications. Without cattle, farming was done by hand. With hoes, this is backbreaking, less efficient, and produces lower yields. You can feed a family, but generating the massive surplus needed to support a large, non-farming urban class, kings, soldiers, artisans, bureaucrats, is exponentially harder. The agricultural base for a dense, complex state is shaky from the start. No horses or donkeys means no carts. All transport was on the heads of people. Long-distance trade, human porters. Moving grain to a city, human porters. This made bulk trade over land, things like grain, timber, incredibly expensive and slow. You could trade lightweight, high-value goods like gold, ivory, and slaves, which is a dark story in itself, but not the fundamental stuff of an integrated economy. The continent's internal connectivity was strangled. So we have lower food production and crippled transport. This created what historians like John Alife call an ecology of poverty. Societies adapted, and they adapted brilliantly, but they adapted to constraints. Population densities remained lower. Settlement patterns were often scattered to avoid fly zones. The incentive was to master your local environment, not to conquer and integrate vast territories. So political systems adapted. More decentralized. Smaller kingdoms. Localized power structures. Not because Africans lacked statecraft, but because the environment limited scale. Now, fast forward to the 19th century. The European colonizers arrive with their machines and their ambitions. They hit the same wall. Their horses and oxen died. They couldn't use wagons to penetrate the interior. The infamous scramble for Africa had a weird shape. See how many colonies are long, narrow strips, stretching from the coast inland? That's not an accident. The railways they built, the lifelines of colonial extraction, were insanely expensive because every piece of equipment, every rail, had to be carried by, you guessed it, human porters until they could hack their way through. The tsetse fly made colonization logistically harder and less profitable than in the Americas or Asia. But here's the cruelest twist. When colonizers did find something valuable, like minerals, they needed labor. And where was the population? Dispersed because of the very ecological constraints the fly created. This, some argue, contributed to the brutality of forced labor practices to concentrate people. So, did the tsetse fly alone prevent development? No, that's too simplistic. History is never about one thing. But was it a massive, persistent, foundational constraint? Absolutely. It was a break on the wheel of history for millions of people. It shaped pre-colonial societies, it funneled colonial exploitation into certain paths, and when the colonizers left, newly independent nations inherited these fractured landscapes. But this isn't a story of destiny. This is a story of a constraint being identified and overcome. Today, we have insecticides, aerial spraying, sterile insect techniques, and drugs for the cattle. We have trucks and tractors that don't get sick. The tsetse belt is shrinking. The invisible wall is finally coming down. The challenge now isn't the fly itself, but overcoming the centuries of path dependency, the settlement patterns, the infrastructure gaps, the economic models that the fly helped to create.